Hey, let's learn one thing today. So I'm going to show you some Emmet tricks. I'm really going to show you one Emmet trick. We're just going to talk about Emmet numbering today. I'm going to show you one trick at the end that I don't think too many people know about, even if they use Emmet every day. So let's get going. I'm in VS Code here, and I'm going to start a new file. And Emmet. Oh, by the way, if you don't know how to install VS Code or don't know how to make a new file, you're probably in the wrong tutorial. So I made a new file here, and VS Code won't do any of the Emmet abbreviation expansions unless it knows it's an HTML document. So that's my first step there. I'm going to save this document to my desktop. I'm just going to call it index.html. And if I spell HTML right, VS Code now allows me to use those Emmet abbreviations. Like if you've seen any YouTube VS Code web dev tutorials, you probably know if you type an exclamation point and hit tab, you get the entire skeleton of an HTML document with the body and the head, and it gives you all those kind of hard to type meta tags that you wouldn't want to have to type. And notice what it does. It puts my cursor right inside the first value of that content attribute in there. So I can just start typing if I want to make a change there. I can tab through all of those values. Maybe I can change the title of the document there. Notice I didn't have to erase that placeholder. VS Code lets me just go right in there. So I'm going to tab down on the body there. And if you've used Emmet, you probably know that you can use the CSS child selectors and a combination of the adjacent selectors. In other words, you can go, give me a section that has an article inside of it. And I don't even hit tab here. I can see how that's going to expand with my little Emmet abbreviation expansion dialog box there. It shows me what I'm going to get. Let's say inside that article, I want an H1, and next to, or as a sibling of that H1, I want a paragraph. There you go. Helps if I do the child selector or the greater than sign, then the H1, then the plus sign for the paragraph. And you can see what it's going to do. It's going to put the H1 and paragraph inside the article, which in turn is inside the section. So this is kind of basic Emmet stuff. What if I want 5 paragraphs? Well, if I type times 5, Emily just hit tab here so that completes, you can see there's going to be 5 paragraphs. So let me simplify this whole thing here. And, if I do this, paragraph times 8, I'm going to get 8 paragraphs. Pretty simple, right? What if I want each one of those to have a class name? Now, the trick here is, of course, you go p dot and then whatever the class name is. Maybe this is body text times 8. So that's going to give me 8 paragraphs with the class of body text. Pretty simple stuff, right? How about if I want those class names to be numbered? So I get body text 1, body text 2, etc. How do I do that? Well, Emmet has this little $sign that's basically it's the index of all of those, or the numbering system of those class names. So if I put a $sign right there and just hit tab to show you, it's going to say body text 1, 2, 3, etc. If you want 2 of those number places, just put $2 signs. Oops. And then you'll get 0, 1, 0, 2, etc. So if I got 12 of them, it'll handle that second number place. All right, so that's, again, just a little bit more beginner or basic. How about if I want to put that number as content inside of each paragraph? Well, before the class name, right, inside the paragraph, I'm going to do a curly bracket, and then I'll use that $sign again. In this case, maybe I'll do 2 of those, right? And you can see now the content inside each paragraph includes the number of the paragraph. And you can even do this sort of thing where you can say number space and then the numbering system. So whatever's inside those curly brackets is content. So it takes that string of letters that's the word number and uses that explicitly, and then it'll find out what number it is as it counts and creates that. So that's pretty cool, right? Now, remember, CSS, you're not allowed to start your class names with a number. So if you go $$ body text, well, you're kind of allowed. It's hard to select them without special characters and escapes and stuff in your selectors. So that's almost too much trouble for what it's worth. And besides the fact, if you're numbering your elements as class names, you might want to rethink your naming convention with something that makes a little more sense. There are a lot of cases where you might want to number your elements so you can move them around, put them on a grid, that sort of thing. But for the most part, CSS has nth child selectors and those sort of things that we can always go into later. So let's stick with the subject here and just take this one more step here. This allows me to number my class names and allows me to put the content inside. Well, here's something I might not know about Emmet. There's something called an implicit tag name generator. I think it's a generator. Here's the documentation on it. Implicit tag names. It shows you how it works. Let me show you how this goes. It's pretty simple. So I'm going to take out my number system here. So let's take a real world situation here. What would go in here? How would I use this, what's called this implicit tag name system? Well, let's say I've got a nav, and inside that nav, I've got a UL, and inside there I've got list items, and I've got 8 of them or whatever. And I want to put a class name on those list items, right? So maybe it's .items, and then my $sign there. So there I'll get what I had with the paragraphs, except they're list items. Well, here's the trick. There's only one thing that goes inside a UL, right? You shouldn't put anything as a direct child of a UL besides a list item. So Emmet knows that. So I can take out the list item right from my little Emmet abbreviation there, and this will still work, right? Now, that explicit tag name system in Emmet also has some other things too. Let's say I've got a bold tag, and inside I want to put a class of maybe the first letter or something like that. Notice what my little expansion dialog box says. If it's an inline element, it's going to be a span inside that inline element, right? That's why automatically, if I'm inside the body and I give something a class name, it's going to make it a div, right? So any block element that has something inside of it is going to have a div as the default. And this is sort of neat for other stuff too. If you're building maybe a table that has some table rows, and then I put a class in there, notice if I put in my child selector there and hit tab, it's going to correctly put a TD inside the table row inside the table. So there's a couple other ones. You can look at the documentation for that. So that's all I want to show you today, so you can learn one thing a day and not fill your brain up with too much that you can't remember. So that's that one thing. We'll see you next time for one more other thing.